We're going live now. We're going live now, baby.
So that we can
do another
talk about inside.
Exactly. Of the Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, we are going to recap the Super Bowl, our thoughts on it, what happened, what transpired, what do we think of the game? And then, of course, we're going to give you some thoughts on what we feel like the future might look like for these Rams and even the Bengals. And then from there, we're going to talk about worst to first. Who do we think has the opportunity of being next year's Bengals team? I think there's several teams that could make that leap. And some of them are kind of cheating because they were decent, but they were in a good division type of scenario as well. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the halftime show, one of our favorite commercials from the big game. And then, of course, we're going to end the show with our favorite segment, the Movie Corner. As always, I am joined by my frightful friend who loves chainsaws and can't wait to talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre later. Mr. Matthew Fox, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, when you start the day facing your greatest fear, which actually is chainsaws, I've never actually completed a film that had a chainsaw in it. As I told you, I never even completed Scarface because as soon as they brought out a chainsaw, I left the dorm room, and my roommate's like, "Don't you want to see the end?" I'm like, "No, you can just tell me about it." It was something.
The Happy Hour podcast, where we face our fears week to week. I love it. The things that we do for our love of film and the love of the banana meter. It's really what it is at the end of the day. Is Matthew Fox will forever hate me and forever in our friendship 10 years from now, we'll talk about how he still has nightmares about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I put it on the banana meter. And he felt obligated to be a good critic and review everything that hits the banana meter. Speaking of which, the banana meter next week or this weekend is Uncharted, and of course that Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Next week we've got the horror film coming to Hulu, No Exit, and next week this guy.
I didn't realize it was so horrible.
This guy gets to see the Batman, so I'm very excited about that. And then of course that'll hit the banana meter. I've heard a lot of good things. I can't tell you from who because they'll get in trouble and I'll get in trouble. But I've heard some good things about the Bat. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to hopefully be a good movie because there's a lot of actors in that film that I like. But you guys listen to the first half of the show because we talk about sports. The movie crew can join a little bit later, or they can't. It doesn't really matter. You just enjoy both of them. We love you guys regardless. But so let's recap the Super Bowl. Obviously a tight game. For me personally, if Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't get hurt, that game's a blowout. I really feel that way. They didn't have an answer early on for Odell. Odell, left the game with the 2 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown, which, by the way, if you listen to this very podcast, one of my favorite bets of the game was a guarantee an Odell Beckham Jr. touchdown. And if you listened Sunday morning to the Super Bowl preview where we threw out some bets, I did say sprinkle some money on OBJ for the first touchdown of the game, which also hit. So I did pretty good last weekend, 6-2 overall in my picks, which, again, you can't be upset about that, guys. Look, I'm not saying I'm great at betting, but I put in about 15% of some of what these other guys do, and their results don't end up as well. Now, I guarantee next year I'll put a little more effort into it, and I'll probably be 2-50 on the year. So, but with that being said, I thought the game was good. I was happy it didn't end up being a blowout. You know what I mean? I was very upset and sad for OBJ because I really feel like he was revitalizing his career. I think he got a bad rap in Cleveland. Whether that was due to his fault or due to Baker's fault or due to the Browns' fault, it doesn't matter to me. I was happy for him. I think he's a very good receiver. But now with the torn ACL, he probably will be out this coming year. So he was in a contract year, which is also extremely frustrating. But I kind of see a lot of good things coming from the Super Bowl. Stafford got a ring. And then, of course, that kind of really made me happy because Stafford's always been that guy that's stuck in purgatory out in Detroit. But good for him. Happy for him. Happy for Kupp, who ended up winning the Super Bowl MVP, which deservingly so. Fox, what were your thoughts on the game as a collective, man?
Yeah, you weren't the only one happy about that OBJ touchdown. I heard Drake put $1.5 million on that. So,
Golly.
Yeah, so as soon as that hit, that was the talk at the gathering that I was in. But it was a good game. It was competitive. I sadly must have been channeling my inner Chris Collinsworth because I made a joke about at least the Rams have scored more than they did in their first Super Bowl, and like 2 minutes later, I heard him say the same joke on the air. So either that or he was miking my house and trying to get material, which I hope I helped you, Chris. I hope I helped you. The Bengals, going into it, we talked a lot about it was going to be the Bengals offensive line versus the Rams defensive line that was probably going to determine the outcome of the game. And that, along with some horrendous officiating, really turned the second half. First, I thought the officials were going to cost the Rams the game. And then later it was like, they got a call that said, you've already screwed this team, so it's time to screw the other team.
Yeah, that terrible call, like the no call on Ramsey, that was awful.
How about Aaron Donald getting straight up punched in the face by a lineman on the boundary? And I saw one of the referees actually made an ejection signal, and then they came together, and there wasn't even a penalty.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind. Like like when that touchdown happened, when the T. Higgins touchdown happened, I thought the game was over. I really thought that this was going to be the momentum shift because, like, anybody that watches that play, look, Ramsey, we talked about this on the show. Ramsey can be burnt, right? Ramsey likes to play a deadly game. And when you like to play that kind of game as a cornerback, when you like to be aggressive, you can end up getting burnt. And that just happens. That's what happens when that style of play happens. But Ramsey's still, like, I want everybody to remember, Ramsey's still one of the best cornerbacks in football. Like, he really is. Like, he is a lockdown corner. But he does like to take risks, and when you take risks, sometimes they don't pay off. But that touchdown was not on him, folks. He was stride for stride with Higgins, and Higgins literally like tore the man's head off. Literally ripped the man's head off.
Well, it was like one hand he had, if you were watching, had Ramsey's jersey. The other one grabbed the face mask and threw him onto the ground. I don't know how that gets missed.
I don't either, and I feel like and that's a crazy thing. They let them play 3 and 8/10 of a quarters of a game, and then the last like few minutes of the game, it's like laundry everywhere, right? Like it kind of was upsetting in some ways because it was like, don't let the Super Bowl be won on something that you haven't been calling all game. Like if you're not going to call the Higgins play, which is complete and utter crap, but then you're going to call the little hand stuff that was happening in the end zone, come on, man. Like I don't understand.
I was also, for a minute, I was worried because it ended up being that offsetting penalties, but Kupp got helmet to helmet lit up in the end zone, and there was offsetting penalties. The Rams made a penalty, so that's. But for a minute, I thought if they knocked him unconscious, it could be over.
Yeah, really.
I'm not throwing it to Skoranek in the corner of the end zone.
No, that's the thing. Like you could tell that he was like, I mean, because even that one he had like at first when I first saw it, I saw the missed pass to Jefferson because Jefferson was wide open. But once you see the different angle, you saw that there was a Bengals guy that he would have had to throw that damn near perfect. Which obviously, if you haven't seen the highlight of the no look pass by Stafford, it's one of the better passes. And that's the crazy thing about it is if Patrick Mahomes makes that pass, we're like circle jerking it across the country. Like, and no offense, like I like Patrick Mahomes, I do, but man, let's get off this guy's nuts a little bit. All right, there's other good quarterbacks in the football league, and let's talk about the fact that he choked 2 weeks before. But we won't go there anymore. But the next thing is I want to talk about the halftime show. I was all over it. It was fantastic. I loved it. It's my cup. It was my jam. I'm a big Eminem fan. Saw him live, one of the best concerts I've ever seen live. But I love 50 Cent, and everybody's criticizing 50 Cent, but I'm pretty certain that I can join the party of I ain't looking like what I did whenever it was 2004, whatever it was, whenever he was, hopping and bopping. And I don't have as much money as 50 Cent, but the jokes were still funny. Sorry, guys, the jokes were still funny. Like, don't get me wrong, I laughed at all of them. But at the end of the day, I really enjoyed the halftime show. I thought it was great. One of my favorite halftime shows, and I really feel like it was great to see a collaborative effort, right? It's not a one-man show. Like, I don't really love the one-man shows. I like when they bring other people on the stage and they bring some, but Dr. Dre kind of leading it and then kind of showing the hands that he's had within that industry was really, really cool. So what did you think of it, Matt?
I liked it a lot too. I also just realized we're both wearing gray, celebrating the state of Colorado.
Hey, there we go, baby. Let's go.
It's more normal for me. I really enjoyed the halftime show. Everybody I was with liked it a lot too. The jokes. Well, first of all, it's weird because 50 Cent was the only one of 6 recognizable performers that didn't get announced he was going to be there.
It was
Didn't get reference that he was there in the post game, or in the post halftime when they're talking about everybody. But the best one I saw on Twitter was that 50 Cent looked like he had been hit by inflation.
Oh yeah, definitely. My buddy Rob Spranta tweeted something out like that, and I died laughing. It's one of the funnier tweets that I saw all game.
You know the best though. So I love Eminem. I was excited about that. I was excited about Dre. They released backstage footage of Eminem meeting Al Michaels, who apparently he really likes, and I had to pause because I was laughing so hard. Al Michaels, oh, I love your music. If Al Michaels had ever heard an Eminem song before Sunday, I would be shocked.
Same. Fucking same. I did enjoy it. Commercials wise, I thought it was kind of just okay. I don't really remember.
I feel like they want me to invest in crypto and get an electric vehicle. That was my takeaway. And while I'm drinking a hard seltzer.
Sopranos one, right? I love that one just because I'm a big Sopranos guy.
I mean, I knew what they were going for. I thought it was okay. Our friend Matt, who is a huge Sopranos fan, hated it. He said that was his least. It made him so angry that trading on Sopranos legacy to sell like an electronic vehicle.
I liked it. I can understand the hate from it, but I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a good commercial. All right, so real quick, we're going to talk about the Rams and Bengals. So I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter about how.
Wait, before we do, did you see the trailer or the commercial for Doctor Strange?
No, I don't watch trailers.
You really didn't watch it?
No, I didn't see it. The only trailer that I saw in the Super Bowl was the Nope trailer. That was the only trailer that I watched or saw.
Oh, that one was good too. I watched both the commercial and the full trailer for Doctor Strange. There's a part of the past of Marvel movies.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing about it is you had no choice, but if you're on Twitter, you already know what happened in the trailer. Like you had a dissecting piece by piece by piece by moment by moment by moment on
as
Twitter.
It was happening.
As it was happening. Like as you see probably Benedict's face, oh my God, Doctor Strange trailer! Oh my God, there's Wolverine and all these other people.
That's why I was not really on my phone during the game.
So yeah, no, I didn't see the commercial. I didn't see the trailer. I don't like watching trailers. The only reason I saw the Nope one, and it's not really a trailer, obviously, because you're only getting a 30-second spot on TV. I did see that one, which I love Jordan Peele and I love his work. So I'm very excited for Nope. I think it's going to be. I really feel like it's going to be good. My expectations are through the roof after his 2 other features were brilliant in so many different ways. It's like I wrote an article about it, and I really just want to revisit Us and Get Out. And funny enough, like I wrote this in the thing because he's written several different things, right? You know what I mean? Full features, especially like Keanu. He wrote Keanu, which I really like Keanu. I would love to see him now that he's a more polished writer. I would love to see him kind of dive back into a humor, but maybe even if it's like a dark humor a little bit, but I would love to see him kind of venture back into that a little bit. But where were we at? Rams, Bengals. Quick thoughts on where we think they go from here. Now, I saw, like I was saying, the Rams are in hell, cap hell, in some aspects. But they can very easily get out of cap hell with a couple of restructures from top to bottom. I saw an article, I think it was on ESPN, where if they restructure maybe like 5 or 6 of their top guys' dollars, they can get into the plus relatively easy. The thing about this is they're gonna. I feel like OBJ being gone is gonna hurt, but people forget they're getting Robert Woods back, right? Robert Woods is a very talented wide receiver, but my thing is this. So I think about this. OBJ's probably out for the season. Okay, he's a free agent. I do think if they can get him back on the cheap and have him return in a playoff run, I really feel like they can go very far there with that. I do think, obviously, they paid the price to win a ring. You know what I mean? They don't have the draft capital, which is a struggle for them. But they also are very good at finding some late round picks. So I could see them trying to lock and load for another run. I personally don't understand why Stafford would come back. I would walk away. Like, I legitimately, like, you've made your money, you won your ring, and I would just retire. I know there's a big question mark surrounding McVay. I do think he comes back. I don't really know if he's going to retire yet. And the thing about it is what started the whole thing is everybody's like, they asked him, do you want to coach into your 60s? And he was like, no. And they're like, oh, McVay's retiring after the Super Bowl. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, everybody, let's stop taking things out of perspective here. Now, he did say that he doesn't want to coach that long, which is fine. Like, he wants to have a family. And somebody like McVay, who is, first off, brilliant when it comes to a lot of things. And, of course, some of his play calling can be very questionable. But I still think he's a very good coach. He does have the Super Bowl now in his pocket. So, I don't know. For the Rams' sake, I think they can make another run. I really do. If they lock and load correctly. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, so right now they're projecting to be a little over 19 million over the cap with what they've got. I'm not 100% sure they don't get OBJ back on a cheap deal because he's a free agent and coming off of a torn ACL where it happened, it being the same knee that it happened before. I doubt he's ready at the beginning of the season. I could see him just taking kind of a friendly deal, playing with a better team where he could come in at the end of October and November and ease himself in and then get another playoff run. The other thing to think about with the Rams is we have to see what all the retirements are that shake out because you usually, I believe, don't take a huge cap hit if a player retires. So Andrew Whitworth's cap hit alone is projected to be almost 18 million. I would almost guarantee he retires. The guy just won a Super Bowl. He's 40 years old, won NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year. That's an almost better walk away on top of the game than John Elway had. So I would think that's potential if he and Aaron Donald retire, because Aaron Donald, I'm sort of 50-50. You haven't gotten a strong sense. The Rams are actually dive back under the cap. Now, that's unfortunately a couple big holes to fill, but they could actually get cap relief through retirements, and I wouldn't be surprised if the cap jumps quite a bit going into this year because it seemed like the NFL made quite a bit. They did not have the financial losses in 2021 that they thought they might.
18 million, I think I saw it.
Yeah. So I'm not as worried about that. If they had if Stafford, Donald, McVay, if they all walk away, the Rams are in a rebuild.
Oh, for sure.
But if it's just, I think Whitworth retires because that makes sense. Age, stage, everything he's accomplished. But if most of the other guys come back, I think they're still strong contenders in the NFC. You're right about Robert Woods. I would not, like I said, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that they retain like an OBJ. With Akers and Henderson still on rookie deals, they have some running back in there, and I think we've seen they can plug and play and fill the holes. They still have a core of a good team under contract, so I think they're right there still.
Yeah, I think they have a tight ends too. You know what I mean? I know.
Higbee.
But Blanton looked good, which was weird to see him not play in the game. I know he got hurt. Apparently, I think it was.
Yeah, he tore his shoulder. He couldn't play.
Okay, so then of course, but then Pinky looked pretty good too. Or was it Pinky?
It's Hopkins.
Bryson
Hopkins.
I get Hopkins and Pinckney mixed up from Vanderbilt there, and Vanderbilt and Purdue whenever they were in the same draft class. But he looked good. He looked good down the stretch a little bit whenever they needed him to step up, made some plays. Like nobody expected him to even be of existence in the game. So
the question is going to be kind of Van Jefferson. We haven't seen him take. At times he's looked okay.
A couple of drops in the big one.
And then, you also have to wonder, last year they took Atwell. Is he going to develop into something?
Yeah, they've got a lot of different tools. Like, they have the weapons, but I think about this. If they can get OBJ back on the team, and obviously health dependent. Obviously, we all understand. A 3 wide receiver set with Cup, Woods, and OBJ is incredibly deadly. Like, it really is. And
something we never got to see, actually, because
we wouldn't have seen it, obviously, if Woods doesn't get hurt either, I don't think. You know what I mean? They don't make the play for OBJ if Woods doesn't go down.
No, they got OBJ before Woods got hurt. Woods got hurt literally 2 days after they signed OBJ in practice. It was supposed to be the kind of 3. It's because they, if you remember, they had started the season with Deshaun Jackson, and they were hoping he'd be the field stretcher.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, he enjoyed his time with the Raiders.
How many games did Deshaun Jackson play? Don't you have to play like 50% and you get a ring or something like that?
Oh, with the Rams? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question.
I don't know. Maybe he'll get a free ring there. So speaking of the Bengals, I just touch on them real quick. I don't think they come back. I think that, look, this is very reminiscent of the Carolina Panthers run, and not the same aspect. And I'm not sitting here saying that the Bengals won't make it back to the playoffs, but I really feel like Joe Burrow may never see the Super Bowl again. So 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nine with the Raiders, 7 with the Rams. But I only saw 15 targets.
So for me, I really don't believe the Bengals are ever going to be back in the Super Bowl. And I know that sounds crazy, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I really feel like they got one of those lucky runs, which kind of really helps. Obviously, they have cap money. I think they're like $30 million in cap space this offseason. They need to spend all $30 million on the offensive line for sure. But I mean, because that was the reason they lost the game. You know what I mean? It came down to the big moments. Aaron Donald wrecked the place, and they just couldn't protect Burrow. But I just don't think this is a Cinderella run. They could easily finish 3rd or 4th place next year, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
They really would. What about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals, what they 100% have to focus on this offseason is the line.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of debate. Should they have taken Chase? Should they have taken Sewell? I don't necessarily, after seeing how everything played out, I don't think taking Chase was necessarily the wrong choice, but it was a choice. And they rolled the dice on their ability to patch it over. And for the most part, during the regular season, it was good enough. But you have to remember, they weren't a dominant team at any point in time. They were 10-7. They won their division more due, I would say, to attrition. You know, the Steelers had that weird flex with a tie. The Browns and the Ravens kind of fell off the shelf. I'm with you. 2 of those 3 teams probably can rebound really easily. The Steelers are a massive question because of quarterback and some other issues. The AFC is not an easy conference. They ended up having a near perfect path to the Super Bowl in that they got the Raiders in the first round, which the Raiders were a decent team, but didn't match up very well. And then instead of getting either the Chiefs or the Bills, who I think either probably could have taken them out, they got to go to Tennessee, which had its own set of difficulties, and they were able to just do enough to get past them. Chiefs kind of melted down there. I'm going to be really curious to see what happens. It seems like now it's coming out that Patrick Mahomes has been at odds with Eric Bieniemy. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with Bieniemy not landing some of these coaching jobs the last couple of years. Now it seems like he may not even be back with the Chiefs, which is just a meteoric fall for a guy who seemed to be the hottest coaching candidate going into the offseason. So there are a lot of kind of issues working in there. But if you're the Bengals, you know, your defense was pretty decent, stepped up when they needed to. You have great weapons in a lot of different areas. I even liked what Mixon did in the backfield. I mean, he was running hard. Got to do better on the line because 7 sacks, particularly in crunch time moments when Aaron Donald and Von Miller, and I know those guys are great, but they caved the line. And when you get to a Super Bowl, to an elite championship game, you're always going to face teams that have great personnel throughout the field because that's how those teams got there. And I think the Bengals really through the draft, through the offseason, need to put some time into that line because I don't know about you, but I winced when I saw Burrow's knee get rolled up. I thought if that guy blows a knee out, fortunately it was just an MCL sprain.
Yeah.
But those are the things you got to worry about, or they're just going to get him killed.
Yeah, I agree 100%. If Burrow goes down, the team's toast. You know what I mean? Burrow brings a presence about himself, and I know there's the whole Sewell versus Chase thing. I honestly don't believe they're there in the Super Bowl without Chase. They're not. It's that offense is kind of opens up a lot with Chase back there. And Sewell had a good season, but he didn't have a great season. He struggled too a little bit throughout the season. But so with that being said, I don't know. The next segment we're going to do is worst to first, right? So that's what the Bengals did this year. The teams that finished in last place this year: Giants, Seahawks, Lions, Panthers, Jets, Broncos, Ravens, Jaguars. In my humble opinion, you can wipe away the Giants, Lions, Jets, and Jaguars. I think the thing about it is crazy is Broncos have really strong odds, and I think it depends on Aaron Rodgers. When we all know they're just going to re-sign Teddy Bridgewater, like we all know that's going to happen. So the inevitable is happening, and it's going to be the demise of Matthew Fox when it does happen. But honestly, the thing about it is Rodgers would go to Denver. That means they are shoo-in for a playoff contention, right? You know what I mean, right off the bat. But
I think there's less than a 1% chance now, based on a lot of the things that have transpired.
Building a house in Nashville, though, so.
Well, I mean, that might be good for you. Despite all that, just making so I'm going to say there are. I agree with you. I'm wiping out the two New York teams. I don't put. Detroit, could be a little bit better, but I don't see them bouncing back. I also don't believe in. I think it's going to take more than a year for Jacksonville to come back. I think if Jacksonville can get in the 6 to 8 win range next year, that's going to be a nice meteoric leap forward. They have some problems. I don't believe in Carolina anymore. I don't know what Matt Rule is doing. I don't know that going and getting Ben McAdoo was the answer to all of their offensive problems. They still don't have a quarterback. So I'm kind of knocking a couple of those out. The teams that, are intriguing. Seattle's not that far removed from being in the playoffs. If they get Russell Wilson to feel settled there and they can reload and get some pieces, they're also a team that I think had some bad luck at times last year, bad injury luck, bad. Baltimore shouldn't be down as a last place team. Talk about bad injury luck. I mean, they were the number 1 seed in the AFC in November, and they just couldn't win down the stretch. They lost 6 straight games to close the season. Lamar Jackson couldn't come back. I think that's a very obvious, that would technically be a worst to first. But I'm going to say, maybe it's fandom, but Denver was not as bad as their record has looked the last couple of years. They suffered from some really mediocre coaching, both offensive play calling and I think game management. I honestly, Fangio did a nice job with defense, but game management as a whole, I think he cost himself 5 to 7 wins the last 2 years with some of the clock management and some of the shenanigans at the end. They are in a really competitive division, but Denver is a team. We also saw how tight packed the West is. If you get 3 or 4 games to go the other way for any of those teams, that's a worst to first. And that was really kind of what happened with the Bengals. The Bengals weren't as bad as their record in the first part of the season. Then Joe Burrow got injured, and when you have a Brandon Allen, and I can't even remember the other guy that they threw out there, they looked like an abomination going down the stretch, but they weren't that bad at the beginning. And most people going into this season, I know I did, I thought they were at least a 6 to 7 win range. You get a little bit better luck, which is what they end up with, and you get up into 9-10 wins. And sometimes with that kind of luck, you can get into the playoffs. So that's where, if you were looking for a true team in that situation, I'd say it's probably, for me, it's Denver, because I think Seattle and Baltimore have good chances simply because they were a little bit of outliers.
Yeah, if you look at Denver, 3 of their last 4 games that they lost, I mean, they were 7-6, right? You're 7-6, you're sitting pretty for at least a stab at the wild card. And 3 of the 4 games they lost were only by 1 touchdown, or 1 score. You know what I'm saying? So 1 score switches at any given way there, you're looking at a different ball game. They lost 2 other games by 1 score as well. So again, you're looking at a different team here that's actually pretty decent when it comes down to things. Because if you look at their wins, they only had 1 game where they won by only 1 score. So, they had a couple big games where they blew some good teams out, especially when you look at the Dallas game. That was a pretty good win. The Chargers game was a good win because the Chargers were really strong at that particular moment in the season. But it's crazy to me. I think if they're going to do anything, they need to win some division games. You know what I mean? That's obviously what they need to do. They're 1-5 in the division this past year. For me, obviously, I'm going to cheat and say the Ravens just because they are a worst to first case scenario. I think that the Ravens have a chance to be in the Super Bowl next year. You know what I mean? They're that good team. And the thing that they do very well is they draft well, right? But the biggest thing about the Ravens is going to be Lamar Jackson and his improvement in the passing game. The thing about Lamar Jackson is he's very good. Very good. But man, he's so inconsistent. You need to see the strides that we've seen out of Josh Allen in him, right? Josh Allen, I thought was going to be a bum. You know what I mean? And he improved year over year on his passing, right? We know he can run. We know these guys can run, but we need to see a little bit more maturity in the passing game. We need to see some potential maturity in the receivers as well, right? You need to get some maturity of the receivers. Hollywood Brown is great now, but his drop problem is crazy. But also there's a report out there Hollywood Brown might retire.
Did you see, though, that got a little bit debunked? That would be shocking, though.
Well, the thing about it is
set them way back.
The thing about it is to be honest with you guys, people don't realize how much money a lot of these up-and-coming guys can make on playing video games. And if you already have that name, and he doesn't have the rookie, he's on a rookie contract, so he didn't make maybe as much as some of these other guys. It would be interesting. It would be interesting to see if something like that would transpire. I wouldn't hate the idea. Some of these guys are starting to see that their worth is a lot more than what football is because, at any given time, you're a nobody, especially these running backs in football. Like, they're a dime a dozen. And if you looked at – I saw the stat about the one stat that I thought was interesting was about the running back position and, like, the salary cap for the running back position over the last couple of years. Like, nobody had been making more than, like, $4 or $5 million, I think. It was something along those lines. But the salary cap, like, total for the last – I think it was, like, 8 years was less than what Zeke Elliott made this year in 1 year. So I just thought that was intriguing. I like the Ravens and the Seahawks. I don't hate the Panthers here. I don't love them, and I kind of looked at them by default because of that division could be a disaster. You know what I mean? So that division could be very, very rough this year. I do think that the Bucs are going to make a move or two. It'll be interesting to see what the Saints do, and the Falcons aren't really out of the equation. Because you still have, obviously, right now, as it sits, the best quarterback in the division with Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan had a good year, especially down the stretch. So they weren't as bad as their record was either. Panthers by default, you know what I mean? I really see that division coming down to a 9-8, 10-7 type of record. And when you play in that division, that's one of those divisions that changes every year, right? You know what I mean? A different team ends up on top. So I think it's the third consecutive year. No, the Saints had won it like 2 or 3 years in a row or whatever. It was like the first time in a long time. But
I think they won 4 in a row before.
Yeah.
Last year.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there as well, because like I said, that division there can fluctuate a whole lot. Yeah, I think that's all. I am not lying. I'm going to throw a little bit of money on the Ravens plus 2,000 to win the Super Bowl because I think that they can make some offseason moves to really – and I'm not saying I'm going to throw the farm on it, but I like them at plus 2,000 right now. I think that changes as the offseason progresses. All right.
So teams that go the other way.
Teams that go the other way. Depending on what Green Bay does, if Rodgers leaves, they will not win. They'll probably be a middle of the road team. The Bucs could be in that path. I really feel like the Bengals could be flip-flop this year. I really do. The Titans aren't going to be as good as they were. I still think they probably win the division because I don't know what Indianapolis is going to do at the quarterback position. I like the hiring of Doug Peterson down in Jacksonville. I still like that hiring. I think they can turn that team around, but they're 3 or 4 maybe years away from, sniffing something. But the biggest team that I think is going to take a drastic hit this year is the San Francisco 49ers. And you can say that because they're in the conference championship. So
you and I are on the same page.
Well, the thing about it is I know I like Trey Lance a little bit more than you do, and I don't really love him. But you're talking about a team that overachieved. Like they had this, like they overachieved a whole lot this year and the entire year. And I really feel like Jimmy G has a certain presence about it. And I know people like to criticize the guy. He's not the best quarterback, right? He's not. But he has a really solid win percentage with that team since he's been with the team. And that's the thing. Like, so when it comes down to the facts is just that. So if you're going to get rid of that veteran presence and you're just going to hand the keys over to Trey Lance, I think that he can struggle. Another team that I'm cautiously optimistic about is the Philadelphia Eagles. They did make the playoffs this year. I don't love Jalen Hurts. He looked better down the stretch. I will not lie. But if they move on from Hurts, then maybe they look a little bit better. But I think you're talking about a Washington football team that underachieved, in my opinion, this year. I think they're a good quarterback. I really like the idea of Jimmy G being in Washington. I think he's the perfect kind of game manager that you need in that team. And they have a really good defense that just fell apart. Like, it just fell apart. We were talking about them as probably being one of the better defenses in football this year, and they just were terrible. So, and they went 7-10. That's not a bad, again, that's not hard to flip-flop 3 or 4 wins there if you get the right guy in, right? You know what I mean? I think with
but having a bad nickname can really cost you 4 games. And as soon as they rolled out Commanders, they went 13-3-win team
this year. So, and I think if Philadelphia does struggle, Washington can make a play. They were 2-4 in the division. You win, go 4-2 in the division. It flip flops and you're there. Another team, maybe Dallas. So, I don't know.
How dare you?
What do you think?
So I'm with you that Tampa Bay and Green Bay are question marks only because of quarterback. If Tampa Bay goes and gets a veteran, as has been rumored, even like a Jimmy or something like that, I find it hard to believe the core of that team can drop below 10 wins. So, but if they're going with Kyle Trask, sometimes the growing pains can put you in the, we saw it with New Orleans. New Orleans was the core of a team that won 4 AFC South titles in a row. Michael Thomas couldn't get on the field. They couldn't figure out the quarterback. All they could muster was 9 wins. So those kind of things happen. Green Bay could, it could not just be Rodgers, but it could also be Adams. And then if you lose both Rodgers and Adams, do you look at moving Aaron Jones and just trying to kind of reboot? I'm not Team Jordan Love right now. I'd have to see a lot more from him before I thought that was a team that could even produce a winning record because it's Green Bay is a great offense because of 3 individual players. You start peeling those individual players off, and that team doesn't have a lot of pieces. So that's a different situation. If we were talking just teams that have put themselves on a trajectory to have a problem, I'm with you with San Francisco. There was an ominous stat that I think I mentioned earlier in the season. After 7 games of the season, only once as 49ers head coach has Kyle Shanahan had a team that had a record over 500. This last year wasn't even one of those years. They kind of caught fire for a little bit of a stretch and were able to pull themselves up there in an incredibly difficult division. The Rams are the reigning Super Bowl champions. The Cardinals have a lot of pieces. They're at least good for half a season, usually the first half of a season. And Seahawks, could definitely bounce back. They had some bad injury luck. They had some bad game luck. They had some middling play calls, and that knocked them to 7-10. But that's a very crowded division. And we've seen the 49ers throughout Shanahan's time seemingly alternate between being in the playoffs and being in the cellar and being in the playoffs and being in the cellar. So that would give me pause. The other one that I think built their season on a lot of good luck is Tennessee. And I don't know what Derrick Henry has left. I don't know. We saw Ryan Tannehill forced to carry that offense, and it didn't happen. Their defense is not.
I forget how lucky they really got. Like, they really got lucky down the stretch. And I understand they finished 12-5, but let's not pretend they beat a whole lot of anything down the stretch. Now, they lost. They lost against. Now, they did beat the Super Bowl champs, right? Without, right? That they did win that football game. And then they beat the Saints, which was not a very good. But like down the stretch, they lost to Houston. They lost to they got blown out by New England. Then they beat a Jacksonville team. Then they lost to Pittsburgh, and they had close game against San Francisco, Miami. Who knows what the hell they were doing? And then they beat Houston. They didn't beat a lot of great teams last year, especially down the stretch.
Well, the only thing they have going for them is Jacksonville likely will be better, but we both think is still in a rebuild. Houston, with some of the moves they've already made this offseason, gives you the impression they plan to tread water for another year. And the Colts now seem dead set on dumping Wentz, and that leaves a big quarterback size question for that team. So that's the only thing Tennessee has going for them. But with Wentz having gone there before he got injured, prior to the season, I actually thought the Colts were going to win the AFC South this year, and I certainly didn't. I thought Tennessee well overperformed. I thought they were a 9-10 win team coming into the year. They ended up with a little bit better luck than that, but they took a huge gamble letting some players go and betting on Julio Jones, and that didn't turn out to be the answer. A.J. Brown alone is not enough to pull them forward. And when they first started making these runs with Mike Vrabel, it was on the back of an incredible defense and a suffocating running game. And I think that defense has sort of eroded a little bit the last couple of years. It's a really pivotal offseason. That is a team that I could see dropping into a 7-win range fairly easily.
Yeah, and they have 6 games where within one score, right? You know what I mean? So like that to me, it comes down to you're in a luck situation. And they should, let's be completely honest, they should have lost the Indianapolis game because Indianapolis, like Frank Wright I don't even know about him. Like I'm still questioning whether he's a good head coach or not. I really am. And then, of course, the Buffalo game, like they got lucky there and kind of came back and won that game. And I think that's because Buffalo just does not have to have a running game. And Buffalo really needs to address that this offseason. But with that,
the other one that I have some concerns about is Arizona. They need to, they ended brutal
from of what's his name being fired. You know what I mean? They really are.
Well, they ended brutally. They don't exactly have the complement of weapons that it seemed like on paper. And the friction between Kyler Murray and the organization is something that could, the Packers and Rodgers were able to smooth that over. I don't think Kingsbury, the Cardinals, and Murray are able to do it if they don't come back together until a week before the regular season.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of question marks on what's going on and who's in charge and who's on first and who's in second type of scenario. So I'll be interested to see what they do with that because it's like I said, there's a lot of question marks there and there's a lot of things like that. That team should not be continuously falling apart in the second half of the season like they have been. Like they were really strong in the first half of the season. You got to put the pieces together. And I think their run game is something that I really feel like they need to kind of hone in on as well. You know what I mean? That's another scenario, another team where I feel like you got to have a capable run game. And I know the Rams just kind of showed that maybe you don't, but they really did. Like a lot of these teams use that short passing game. Kyle Murray to me is just too inconsistent too. I feel like he's part of the problem. He really is. I understand, like, he's good and he does a lot of good, but he's part of the issues too down the stretch. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what we do, see what happens over the next couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see what free agency has in store with this. There's a lot of dominoes this year in the free agent pile that I'm kind of intrigued by. But before we do that, we're going to transition into Matthew Fox and I's favorite segment of the show. That's the movie corner here. There's a lot of content still out, right? Stuff left over from last week you might have missed. And then, of course, in theaters, we got 3 new movies in theaters. We got Uncharted, we got Dog, we got Cursed. Netflix dropped Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Matthew Fox's favorite movie of the year so far. The Lincoln Dilemma dropped. It's a docu-series dropping on Apple TV Plus about Abraham Lincoln. I've heard great things about it. And then, of course, you have Severance, which is a TV show that's dropping on Apple TV Plus as well.
Marvelous Miss Maisel is back.
I don't even know what that is, but exciting for you.
One of the best ones on Amazon Prime, created by the lady that made Gilmore Girls.
I'm excited for you, I guess I could say. I mean, if that's what I'll just say. I'm excited for you. I don't know why you're yelling here, Matt. I mean, geez. I'm sorry about my comment about your favorite show of all time, our favorite movie of all time. So I apologize for that. But I personally have seen Dog. I personally did not want to see that movie. And I loved it. And I can't believe I loved it. I'm still shocked that I love it. But you know what? I did. So forgive me for that. So voila. And I know Matthew Fox is on the opposite end of this, but I have watched the first 2 episodes of Bel Air, and I have loved him. He hated him. So, watch with caution. I'm right. He's wrong. Watch with caution. So, and I can't wait to find out.
You didn't want to see Dog. You thought it was going to be terrible. That is how I felt about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And you know what? That was accurate. Yeah. Somebody had a tweet, which if you go to my timeline, I retweeted, which said, "My expectations for you were low, but holy fuck." That was his initial reactions to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If you are looking for a lot of people to be dismembered, congratulations, you found your movie. 2022 has delivered you a gem. If you were looking to see what would happen if somebody that had no talent decided to reboot Halloween, congratulations. You have, well, we already got that with Rob Zombie's film, but you get it again here with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was not good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it later, or not. I don't really know what I'm looking forward to in life anymore, but it's going to be an interesting piece of the puzzle. Make sure that like we talk about, we're going to harp on it every single week until you check it out because you're listening and we love you. But make sure to check out the bananameter.com. Both the Uncharted and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will hit the meter this weekend.
Yeah.
Actually,
I'm seeing Uncharted for date night tonight, so
I'm intrigued by Uncharted because I think it sits, and this is just like for those of you actually listening, it's at like 58% on the meter right now. So it's right above the line of ripe status right now. There's been a lot of range of mixed reviews for it, but I'm interested to see it. If it's good trash, and that's all I'm really looking forward to. You know what I mean? Like there's a thing called good trash, folks, and you'll hear me harp and talk about it on so many different aspects. But if it's good trash, I'll look forward to it. If it's bad trash, then I'll let you know about it.
Definitely no.
But all right, folks, make sure to head on over to Twitter. Give Matthew Fox a follower. Give him a follow on Twitter at Nighthawk7734. Follow myself at @RickyVillar_. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming for you guys. We were going to announce a few things, but then I nixed the announcement because I thought we were going to take off next week, but maybe we won't take off next week. It depends on
free agent roundup.
Exactly. It depends on what happens. And then, of course, my week will be semi-busy because I've got a date night with the Batman. But
you're going to start it next week so that you'll be done by the following week, right?
Maybe not. I don't know. But since the following week, I probably won't be around because I will be in a different state. But I don't know. We'll see. The schedule is the schedule. We'll let you know. We appear, and once it drops into your ears, if you're listening on podcast formats, we appreciate you. We're going to have a lot of fun this off season. We've got a lot of the other writers on the Music City Drive-In that are going to pitch in. We've got some rankings coming your way. We got some rookie stuff. We're going to have a draft show. I've hosted 2 consecutive years. I really haven't made a formal announcement, but if you've made it to 47 minutes and 20 seconds into the podcast, you are the first to hear that we are going to do a live draft show like we've done every year for the last couple of years. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. We'll have guests
to watch me cry when they take Malik Willis at pick 9.
Exactly. And then, of course, I think you know what, even better this year, we're going to make a drinking game out of this year's draft. And I'll be taking part in it. And Matthew Fox will be crying over the Broncos pick, and I'll be crying over my stupid idea of having a drinking game. But thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you guys later.